Thomas Green here with the Peaceful Parenting Podcast. On the episode today, we have Jake Morgan. Hello, Jake.
Hello.
And a special guest by the name of Shaun Banks. Shaun, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Would you like to take a moment and tell the audience a bit about yourself and what you do?
Absolutely. Well, I'm in youth development, and I've been in youth development for about the last 20 years. And it started with a self-defense program called I Am Defense. Teaches women and children how to defend themselves. And then from there, we went on to Camp Warrior King, which is a youth development camp that gives kids exposure to things they normally wouldn't experience during the year. And then from there, went on into the youth magazine and youth development products.
So I did want to ask, and congratulations on doing all that great stuff. I did want to ask before we get started, did you purposefully go into sort of charitable based activities, or was it just like a passion for you that you went into automatically?
I had no passion to work with youth, actually. It wasn't something that I was into at all, and started seeing the need for it. And so we started teaching, like I said, with the martial arts programs, and then the market changed about 2008. And that was when I got into it, full time. But it wasn't something that I had always had a passion to do. The passion came once I started seeing how big the need was and the impact that was having on children.
Okay, thanks. Well,
why martial arts? Sorry, I was just jumping in there. I was just curious about the martial arts element.
Okay, what's your question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, what was it about martial arts? Was it because of a need to defend kids, or what's the instigator behind that?
Well, it originally started, I took martial arts as a kid growing up. My mom put me in martial arts, and that was just a way to keep me busy. And so that was always a passion. And then about 1997, actually 1997 is when my aunt and my cousin were murdered in a domestic violence situation. And so from there, that was something that, I always wanted to do something to be able to do something in their name or to be able to give back. And so when we started the program years later, it was an honor of that, to be able to help women learn how to defend themselves and children as well.
Yeah, really important thing.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for your loss there. That's horrible.
Thank you, man.
No, amazing thing to do. In terms of topic of discussion today, you said that maybe protecting your children from social media might be a good one. You happy to talk about that?
Sure. Social media is, of course, it's neither good nor bad, right? It's just it's a thing, right? It's just it's a constant, if you will. And however, there's so much on there that is impacting children. And one of the things that parents might want to do is consider ways to be able to monitor how their children are on social media, the things that they're seeing, because of course you can't shield kids from everything, but I think it's prudent to protect your kids from some of the things that's on social media that they can get into, because it affects their performance, it affects their development, right? The suicide rate amongst kids is skyrocketed, and it's not totally because of social media, but just the exposure to things that kids see plays a big part.
You say the suicide rate's gone up. Do you have any sort of numbers or anything on that? Because I haven't heard that personally.
Sure. Well, I know, in the US, I know that the number 2 cause of death amongst young adults is actually suicide. And so, which has changed a lot, especially due to COVID and things like that, because kids are, at home more and they're not able to socialize as much. So I know here that impact has hit us a lot here. I'm not sure about in other places in the world, but I'm pretty sure that in a lot of developed countries that they're seeing the same kinds of things happen, especially if it's, if they're able to see social media and they're on social media as much. Again, I'm not saying that social media is the reason for it, but, when we just talk about exposure, and one of the things that is important for kids is exposure and getting the right exposure and getting the right development. Social media does allow for a lot of exposure, both good and bad.
So what advice, if a parent was to ask you regarding social media, what advice would you give them around how they should go about tackling that topic?
I would say start at a particular age. I mean, we're talking about social media, we're talking about, any kind of, digital platform, right? So, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. It's just what I would say is, start at a particular age. There are kids programs on there, allowing your kid just to watch those kids programs as opposed to just letting them kind of have free reign on, the whole social media platform. And then most importantly, to supervise what they're watching so that, you see what your kids are watching, you see kind of what's going into their, into their mind. So the biggest thing would be supervision and limiting what they're able to see.
Thomas, you've got younger children than I have. My kids are teenagers. I've got a 13-year-old and a 15-year-old. So social media is a really big thing for them. I mean, they are.
Right.
It's difficult to tear them away from their phones. To be perfectly honest, it's
Right.
they're constantly on them, and no matter what we do, it's like magic. It just appears in their hand, and then it's got half of their attention. And it's really difficult to stay on top of the interactions that they're having, especially at that age. I guess the 15-year-old is still just as vulnerable because a 15-year-old doesn't have that much life experience. But I think the 13-year-old and the 15-year-old, developmentally, they must be at a different level, and yet they're on the same platforms. They're looking at the same things, I think. Have you got any advice on how we can measure what they're doing or monitor what they're doing in a sort of positive way?
Absolutely. The biggest thing is going to be the supervision, right? And knowing what it is they're watching or watching what they're watching. You can't be over their shoulder all the time, right? So they don't want you right up under them looking at what they're watching on social media. But it is important to say, hey, look, these are the things that you can watch. These are things that, we want you to be able to watch. And, this other stuff over here, we don't want you to, which a lot of times means that's exactly what they're going to try to want to see, right? Because it's, just the natural rebellion in kids. But a lot of it is just limiting either what they're able to see or the amount of time they're able to do it. So you can't be with your kids all the time, especially if they're teenagers, but you can, talk to them a lot about the things that you want them to be able to see and then limit what they're seeing at the house. So one idea that a lot of families use is that when you come home, you put your phone up, which is really hard to do because then that means that now everybody has to engage and has to talk, but it improves family time. That means, either you're playing old school board games or, or even playing video games, which is better than, the social media aspect, because at least with the video game, what they're going to see in that game, right? Or at least you think you do, right? As opposed to, with social media being a whole different world. So that's one way to do it. Hey, when you guys come in the house, hey, we're going to all put our phones up. We're going to put them up for the first couple hours or whatever, so that we can get some family time. We can play some board games and get them into other things that, would be interesting and fun to them. So creating a positive distraction, if you will, from the social media.
The other sort of side topic we were going to discuss, and the reason I bring it up is because it links to this one, is building confidence. Have you got any thoughts on social media and confidence? And then how do you go about building kids' confidence in general?
Social media and confidence, social media is, it's just a platform, so it's neither good nor bad. So there's a lot of good confidence building things you can find on social media. And then likewise, there's a lot of, negative things that could tear down a child's confidence that's on social media as well. The thing is getting your child to go towards the positive things and sticking with those positive things as opposed to, running into all the negative stuff. And that's why the supervision is so important, and also limiting the amount of time that they're on social media, because we all know, you can go into your feed and you might be interested in just a few things, but every once in a while, something's going to pop in that you're not necessarily interested in, or something that you don't want to see. And it's the same thing with the kid. Like the algorithm doesn't necessarily look at, okay, they know the age of the kid and there's certain restrictions, but it's still going to, if the kid is interested in, let's say, hunting, for example, then everything that goes into hunting, that kid's going to see. And so you may not want them to see all of those things. So as far as building confidence in social media, would be important to limit or just to be able to steer them in the direction of the things that you want them to go, because it could be a very positive tool. There's a lot of positive people that use social media platforms. It's just being able to steer them in that direction. As far as ways to develop confidence, there's all kinds of ways to develop confidence, and it's always based on the child, right? So there's no one way to do something with every single child. One thing that I've learned that works very well, with my experience, is to get them to act in the direction of where you want them to go. So for example, if a kid's afraid to get into the water, rather afraid to jump in the water, then the first thing needs to happen as a parent is, okay, if you're trying to get them to get in the water, so get in the water first and let them know, hey, look, the water's fine, right? So the kid may say, hey, look, I'm not buying it. I'm still not trying to jump in the water. Okay, well, where will you start? Will you sit next to the pool, right? And then that's action. That's getting them closer to where you want them to be, because action cures fear, right? And by repeating action, their confidence will grow. All right, well, now do you want to put your foot in the water? Okay, put your foot in the water. All right, that feels okay. Right now they're moving towards those action steps, which will build their confidence that, oh, okay, maybe the water isn't as bad. And that takes longer with certain kids, and you gradually move them in that direction. I've seen that be the thing that works more than not with most children.
Did you want to talk a little bit about Team Hot Sauce for a moment?
Sure. So Team Hot Sauce are personal development characters that build kids' self-esteem. It's all about self-efficacy with children and getting them to believe in themselves. And so these characters, some were created, like Uncle Hot is an example of my uncle, who was just a great guy growing up as a kid. He was always really positive and a very lively and bright personality. And the characters are teaching kids about believing in themselves and telling stories about, challenges, dealing with, what happens when you lose a friend, or what happens when you can't, accomplish this project, and how to work through it. It's all about getting those kids to believe in themselves. So there's 9 different characters, and they're all under Uncle Hot. He's raising and developing these kids. He created a hot sauce with the secret ingredient. It's called the love. And so he's like this rich uncle, and they're traveling all over the galaxy, meeting different people and doing all kind of cool stuff, and just getting people to believe in themselves and have more development.
And I love that. I've got to say, that's
yeah.
I just love that to bits. Hot sauce as well,
Yeah.
Everything about it.
Yeah, it's
really
cool.
Great. Yeah. How did you come up with that concept? Was it just curious.
Well, it started, as a matter of fact, teaching a class, teaching a martial arts class. I had a parent that would always draw in the class, and I said, hey, it'd be cool if we had, some characters that we could add to, the classes. And he said, okay, all right, I'll hook some stuff up and start drawing some stuff. And so, he would draw a character, and we'd go back and forth. And then we started having the kids in the class name one of the characters. And that was like 10 years ago. And then they just kind of sat for a while. And then, we had another opportunity to say, okay, well, let's actually do something with these characters. Let's actually put them on the uniforms. Let's get them working with the kids. And then we started coming up with more and more characters as time went on. And that's how it started.
Yeah, I can see that's a really interactive thing, especially for the first kids who are involved in that. And
right.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a really nice medium to get them their attention and to sort of give them some good advice, I guess.
Right. I mean, and just something positive, right? Because there's so much, there are a lot of positive things out there, but there can always be more, right? We need a lot of positive, especially when we're talking about developing youth, because they see so much just out in the world where they're just going to school, right? Before you even get to social media, going to school, hanging out with their friends, there's so much exposure that there has to be something where a kid can say, all right, I remember this quote from this shirt, right? It's no big deal. Don't wallow in it, right? So, hey, man, don't let it bother you. Or, leaders lead by example, right? And those kinds of things that kind of stick in your head when you're in a situation and you say, oh, okay, well, leaders lead by example. Maybe I shouldn't, go and do this bad thing. Maybe I should, because my little brother or my little sister's watching, or my friends, maybe I shouldn't do it. And so it's just trying to plant seeds, if you will, to help the kids, have a brighter future. And it's something that can, maybe save a kid's life, man, or just give them a brighter day, right? Just make them happy. Yeah.
And what kind of age group is it aimed towards? What's the sort of the best? Is there a specific age, or is it just generally for anyone?
So over the years, my primary focus has been with kids, like school age kids. So ages 5 to 15 has kind of been where I've been doing a lot of the work. But the characters are relatable to anybody, because we all deal with the same kind of situation. So the focus is on school age kids, but sometimes I have to remind myself, hey man, don't wallow in it, right? Let it go, right? Keep going. Or one of my favorite quotes that we did with the character is actually from Alan Kay. And the quote is, the best way to invent the future, the best way to predict your future is to invent it. And that's something that's really cool. And that's on one of the character shirts that we have. And so that's something that, sometimes we all have to remember and think about, like, okay, if I want this future, I can create what I want, right? I don't have to be stuck in this situation. I don't have to settle for what I don't want. So it's something that anyone can use.
Yeah,
and we have
really
cards.
like that.
We have cards we created. See if I can, they may not be able to see it, but I'll show it to you all. You can see them. So these are called success stacks. And on the back of these stacks are words and phrases. You may not be able to see it, but and words and phrases that build a child's self-efficacy. So this word is achieve, right? And then it gives the child the definition, right, to successfully bring out or reach a desired objective, level, or result, by effort, skill, or courage. And then we give an example. I can achieve my ambition to become and then there's a blank, right, to become a doctor or an engineer or a pilot or whatever. And then there's another one. She achieved the highest score in history, right? So it's just things to build kids' self-efficacy and their self-confidence. And that's what it's all about.
Brilliant. And broccoli as well, I see in your t-shirt.
Yeah, broccoli. That's right.
Like Bruce Lee.
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, broccoli. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So is it also a book that you have with it, or what's the main format for Team Hot Sauce?
So right now, the main format are comics. So we're writing comics inside of the magazine, and we're working on kids' books, right, like small children's books, and then we have the success stacks, and so those are the three, main ways right now that we're working on it. Working on some animation stuff, but it takes a little bit more time. So we're starting with the comics and the things that are right in front of us. T-shirts. So for example, the kids at camp this year got to pick a T-shirt from one of the 9 characters that we have, and so they have to pick the T-shirt that they wanted. And so all the kids now, for our camp, have T-shirts and stuff that have the quotes and things like that on there. So we're trying to do really anything that we can to get exposure and to get it in kids' hands.
Have you got any thoughts on, you mentioned suicide rates at the beginning. I think it's becoming more common for topics like anxiety to be prevalent. How would you go about tackling, if a child said they had anxiety, how would you use these principles to help them?
Again, it depends on the child. If a child says, I have anxiety about something, I think that the first thing that I would do is to believe them, right, and just to believe that they have that concern, right, and see if they really have an understanding of actually what anxiety is. But just to believe them that I'm concerned, right, because people know what anxiety is. And what I would do with the characters is I would either help them find a character that they can relate to, and maybe create a story around that could help them understand that at their level. And then we have, for example, with the success stacks, we have words and phrases that kind of go against that. So the idea is that when you use certain words, you speak words into existence, right? The words you use speak certain things into your life, right? So if you constantly saying, I have anxiety about something, you're almost professing that, right? It's like saying I'm sad all the time, right? If you always say you're sad, you're not really going to be happy. You're going to kind of have what you're constantly saying. And so what I would do is I would find one of these words that would, go against that and say, well, hey, look, we understand that this is what you're dealing with, that you might actually be, but, hey, maybe let's say instead of you're having anxiety, that you're dealing with, right, anxiety. And then what's a word or phrase that we can use to kind of get you steered out that direction? Doesn't mean it's necessarily going to stop the challenge that's creating the anxiety, but it may help them deal with it better.
And do your characters cover bullying at all?
Yeah, they will. They definitely will. The first couple issues that we haven't spoke directly to bullying, but they will. So, for example, the first comic that we did speaks to being a friend, and so which is of course opposite of being a bully, but actually speaks to being a friend. Ketchup, which is one of the characters, forgot his lunch, and Broccoli actually says, "Hey, look, let me help you out." He's watching Broccoli eat his lunch, and Broccoli's like, "Okay, man, let's get you something to eat." They go to the cafeteria, and he pays for his lunch. And Ketchup's like, "Thanks a lot." And he's like, "Yeah, man, friends help friends," right? And so we'll definitely address that because bullying is a big issue, and it's something that kids are definitely dealing with.
Is that the catchphrase for that character? Friends help friends. Is that kind of how that works?
Well, it's just a phrase that's the truth, right? That friends help friends. So we want to have as many phrases as we can with the characters, so that because a different phrase will relate to a different kid, right? Like friends help friends. That's one that a kid can relate to. And then we have others. For example, Sergeant. I'm not sure if you can see him on here, but he's an army ant. And his quote that we had on the first set of shirts was "Forward march, finish what you start," right? Which is just completing a circle. Hey man, if you start it, you got to finish it. If you're gonna play on this baseball team, finish the season. Don't quit, right? It's just going to trying to teach kids to finish things that they start. So we want to have as many phrases as we can.
Yeah, right. Because I guess especially with martial arts, you must have seen people who are really enthusiastic, and then they realize that how much work is involved. It's like, learning to play the piano or something, and you're like, oh, I really want to learn to play the piano, but actually it's, there's a lot of effort that has to be put in.
It's a lot of effort, right? It's a lot of effort into it, and it's that's a concept of life, right? It's and so we can get the kids to kind of understand it at a younger age. Then as they get older, maybe they'll stick with some of the things that they love to do or that they like to do. There's nothing wrong with saying, okay, hey, I want to play piano or I want to try martial arts, and then you get into it and you say, that's really not my bag. That's not my thing. I thought I would like it the way it looks, but I don't really want to do it. That's fine, right? That's life. That's learning yourself. The challenge is that they say, well, this class is going to be for 5 weeks. Then, hey, you know what? We should finish those 5 weeks. After the 5 weeks, you don't want to do it anymore. That's fine. But you started this class, right? This season, let's go ahead and finish it out because there's something about completing something. As long as, of course, it's not causing any kind of serious pain or damage or anything like that. But there's confidence in completing. So we're talking about, building a child's confidence, right? There's confidence in completing a task, right? We take classes all the time. We've all done it. And like calculus, right? Calculus was just like, give me a headache. It was hard, but you had to finish it, right? Even though it was hard. And once you finish it, you're like, man, I might have got a C or a B or whatever, but at least I finished. At least I didn't just quit right in the middle. And those are the valuable life concepts that we want kids to learn.
Yeah. So as I said earlier, Thomas's kids are a bit younger than mine. So is there, and you said earlier on when we were talking about social media, to set these kind of expectations or to set up how we're going to manage it as early as possible. So is that the case with everything? I guess it's better to get these messages out now to kids of Thomas's age rather
Absolutely.
But I guess it's never too late. But it's just much easier if you start early, right?
Absolutely. It's much easier if you start when they're younger because the children, right, their first couple years of life is when they're learning the most anyway, right? And that's, when you start talking about child psychology, kids are learning a ton of information in their younger years. And so it's like building a foundation on a building. You want that foundation to be strong. And it's not that you ever stop telling them the things that you're going to tell them. You have to tell them their whole life, right? I mean, I talk to my parents now. My dad or my mom might tell me something that they were telling me when I was 7 or 8 years old. So it never stops, right? The parenting never stops. But yeah, chances are if you're telling your children these things at an earlier age, they're going to remember it, right? And it's going to stick with them a little bit better, and they can deal with some of the challenges a little bit younger. So, I mean, because the other thing is that when we were in school and we pretty much all about the same age, we didn't have as much exposure. There wasn't social media and all this stuff going on. So there wasn't as many things that we had to kind of combat. We still had our, same kind of, bullying stuff and all that, but nowhere compared to how big bullying is or the issue is now. And so kids are experiencing things at a younger age. So they need tools to combat or defend against the mental attacks at an earlier age as well. I mean, if a kid goes on, like now, it's like, okay, well, you have to be this size, right? Or if you're overweight, then something's wrong with you. If you don't look like this, something's wrong with you. If your hair is like this, something's wrong with you. If you don't have these shoes, then right. So everything's designed to where people and kids are trying to figure out how to fit in. And if they don't learn some things that, hey, no, you're okay just how you are, right? It's going to make life harder for them.
Are there any platforms that you think are particularly worse than others?
Particularly worse? Not exactly. I think that it's not necessarily the platforms, it's the use of them, because all of them pretty much have, as far as social media platforms, have the same amount of exposure. I think that it's more, there are kids that are more supervised and some that are less supervised. I think at the end of the day, it all comes down to the parent, right? Like these platforms aren't good or bad. It's more, what is parent doing, right? Like we can't blame, like, for example, I talk to friends all the time, like, no, you can't blame the music for what's happening to kids. You really shouldn't even let your kid listen to the music, right? The music is there, but it's more of a parenting thing, that not allowing your kid to see certain things or monitoring what they see. So I think it's more of that than it is the platform.
Is there anything that you would want to mention that we haven't asked you about today?
Well, we've talked about a lot of stuff, which I think is great. The youth magazine is something that we're really, excited about, because the youth magazine is called You Can Have It All. And it's all about motivating kids to go after their dreams. But the cool thing about the magazine is that it's kids motivating kids. So they're in there and they're seeing kids doing cool stuff, whether it's sports, electronics, technology, art, dance, and they're being motivated by that. And it's an international magazine. Right now, we've got it translated into Spanish. We're working on other languages, and something that we want children around the world to be able to get into, because motivation is a universal language.
Jake, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, where can people get hold of that magazine?
On the website. So it's ychiamag.com. So ychiamag.com. Or they can go to youcanhaveitallmagazine.com and be able to check out the magazine. It's digital, right? Of course, we also have physical copies, but just internationally, digital is much, much better. And they download right to their phone, and their kid can, be able to see the magazine and interact with it, right? Which is the cool thing. Not only can they see videos, but then they can also, for example, we have recipes, and we'll say, well, hey, if you have a recipe you'd like to have in the magazine, then put it in there. And what we're trying to create in that is a culture where, I'm in Atlanta, right? So, and you may not know what dessert is really cool, right, in Atlanta in the South, right? But then, if you're in Europe, right, there's a cool dessert that I might actually love. And I'm learning about that. And I might want to travel and have it, or I might want my mom to fix it here at the house. And so it's all about that interaction where kids can kind of interact with each other in a safe environment, because they're pretty much interacting with their ideas, and it's on a platform in the magazine, and so it's safe for them.
I got to say, looking at your T-shirt, I'm really getting hungry now. Actually,
it makes you hungry. Yeah, man. Yeah, but
yeah, I like that the characters are food, right? Food
yes,
based.
sir.
Right.
Yeah, man.
All right. Well, Shaun Banks, thank you very much for your time, and congratulations again on all your good work.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, Thomas. I appreciate it. And Jake, thank you very much.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.